As patron of the choir, I am delighted to introduce a video which contains a talk by our chair and deputy musical director, David Druce. David gave a presentation recently to a group in Cockfosters, North Southgate Synagogue, about his passion for music and choirs and about his association with the London Cantorial Singers, from his earliest recollections to the most recent events, including what happened during the COVID pandemic. The talk also contains several videos of the choir performing at the famous Princes Road Synagogue in Liverpool in June of this year. This was a first for the choir, and to celebrate this achievement, here is cantor Reverend David Rome performing Schlossberg's Shechechiyonu prayer.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Coffee and Company Live. It's very unusual that I find myself standing up here with a lectern. So today we're going to do something completely different. It's brand new. It's never been done like this in Coffee and Company before. And it's a presentation by David Druce, who is our guest today, one of two. He is the chairman, the former musical director of the London Cantorial Singers. He's going to talk about his life in music and about the choir. So William Shakespeare wrote in Twelfth Night, "If music be the food of love, play on."
So I'm splitting up the presentation into different areas. First of all, about my life in relation to music and choirs. Secondly, about how I became involved with the London Cantorial Singers and how the choir has evolved. And thirdly, at various points during the talk, I will play you some videos of the choir singing some of our iconic pieces at a very special recent concert venue up in Liverpool. So, my musical journey started when I was 5 years old, when my mother, who played the piano, arranged for me to have piano lessons with a Mrs. Fisher. I'll always remember her. I lived in West Finchley with my sister Rosalind and my parents Audrey and Stanley. We moved to Hendon in 1966 when my mother had my younger sister Sharon, and the family became members of Hendon United Synagogue. Soon after, I enrolled as a boy alto in the Shul choir. An alto voice is a bit lower than a soprano voice, and as you can hear now, I've got quite a bass voice. This was my first taste of singing in a choir, and I made friends with other choristers and sang under the baton of the great Lionel Lee and the famous cantor Moshe Korn. I learnt many liturgical pieces, and I think my love of liturgical music stemmed from my time in the Hendon Shul choir. I would receive half a crown. Everybody remember what half a crown is? Every so often for singing in the choir, and the skills and disciplines that are needed to sing in any choir were slowly being learnt by me and all my chorister friends. I learnt to play the guitar at the age of 12, and I had my bar mitzvah and got married at Riley Close Shul. And apart from a 2-year break when my voice broke, I was with the Hendon Shul choir until 1980 when I got married. One thing about being in a group is the opportunity to make lots of friends, and being in a choir with people enjoying the singing environment was great for me. So it was natural for me to join the Belmont choir when, after getting married and upon moving to Belmont, which is in South Stanmore. So I learned the baritone line of the music at Belmont Shul under the conducting skills of Ellie Kindvold. I had never thought of myself as a choir conductor, but in 1985, Ellie needed to step down as he became Shul warden. So we had a discussion about who should take over, and my name was mentioned, along with some others, as a possible successor, even though I had no experience at all of conducting. I seem to recall that I was very nervous at the time, like I am now, about taking on this role, but we agreed that we should give it a 3-month trial on my side and on the choir side to see how things worked out. I had to learn from scratch what to do, but it seemed to be working out okay. We would sing on Shabbat Mevorachim and all the Yom Tovim, and slowly but surely, I was able to learn how to get a note from a tuning fork and then to give the choir their starting notes. My ability to read music notation from my piano and guitar tuition helped a lot. We even participated in choral concerts back in the 1980s, and we also sang at weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat chayils, and the community generally liked our ability to enhance the shul services without prolonging them. I taught the choir many new pieces, and I was able to introduce some of my favourite pieces from my time in the Hendon Shul choir. I left Belmont in 1999 when the family moved to Kenton, and I joined the Kenton Shul choir. I also sang in the Shabbaton choir between 2000 and 2012. In 2005, I heard about the neighbouring Wembley Shul choir. I heard that it was going to fold because the then choir master was moving out of the area with no one to take over. I contacted Wembley and had a discussion with them, and this led to me becoming the conductor of the Wembley Shul choir until 2017, when I moved with my family to Bushey. More recently, like in the last year, I have helped set up a school choir at the Rimon Primary School in Golders Green. We'll stop there and play piece number 1.
Show me
Was Henry Black, one of our soloists in the choir, and we took part in a concert in the prestigious Princes Road Synagogue in Liverpool just a few months ago. And I have to say that it's a bit beshert that I'm giving this talk today and I'm able to show you videos of the most beautiful synagogue, I think, in the UK. Princes Road Synagogue. If you ever get a chance to visit Liverpool and go to the synagogue, it's well worth it. So I'll continue with the talk. My first connection with the London Cantorial Singers came in 1995. My friend Alan Friedman, who was conducting the Hendonshall Choir at the time, asked me to sing in a choir he put together for a special 125th anniversary for the United Synagogue itself. It took place at the Central Synagogue in Great Portland Street. I sang baritone as part of this choir, and at the end of the service, when we were winding down, a gentleman came up to me. He was one of the melody section, and he introduced himself as Ian Lyons. He said he had heard me sing and complimented me on my singing skills. He told me he had started up a brand new community choir earlier that year, and he asked if he would like to join the group. I was, of course, very flattered by his kind words, and I said I would reflect on it. I talked it over with my wife, Roberta, and I started going along to the rehearsals, which were held in Ian's home on the borders of Mill Hill and Totteridge. Right, this was singing at a high level from the shawl choirs that I had been used to. Rehearsals were weekly, and Ian not only ran the choir, but he arranged all the events through his numerous contacts. He was also the chairman of the Board of Governors of Hasmonean Primary School, amongst his many jobs. But we performed at several concerts during 1996 and 1997 with me as part of the baritone section, and we had 3 different conductors during that period, depending on who was available. Then towards the end of 1997, something happened that changed the choir forever. Ian had to have a heart operation in the autumn, and although we were told that the operation was successful, there were complications soon after, and I remember that the news came out one fateful morning that Ian had passed away. Incidentally, I still keep in touch today regularly with Cynthia, his wife, to let her know about the choir and our achievements to date. As you can imagine, his passing hit us all for 6. It was a tremendous shock, and we didn't really have a clue what to do, given that Ian had been the dynamic force behind everything the choir did. I remember well the crisis meeting that we held at the home of the late Peter Hyman in December 1997. We were all still in shock about Ian's sudden passing, and one thing became apparent as we discussed the choir's future. We decided that he would have wanted us to work out ways of continuing his vision of performing high-quality choral music in front of audiences. He was passionate about what he wanted, and I think part of that passion had rubbed off on us. So Peter made the observation that for the choir to improve in sound and quality, we needed a permanent conductor and not keep switching between conductors. It was also Peter that suggested I take over the baton, given my experience of conducting the Belmont Shore Choir. This time I immediately accepted, and so we formed a choir committee, as you do. 1998 was a very difficult year, as we had lost our inspiration and guiding light, Ian, who also, with his many contacts, had been responsible for organising most of the events during the early years. We managed 4 events in 1998, and this was only achieved after many, many hours of phoning around and following up various leads. Feb 98, Malava Malka at West Ham and Upton Park Synagogue. May 98, the 50th anniversary service for the Association of Jewish Friendship Clubs, and that was back at the Central Synagogue in Great Portland Street. August 98, Shabbat the Mitzvah service at Stanmore with one of our soloists, Henry Black, who was the Chazan of Stanmore. November 98, an afternoon concert at Nightingale House. I'm sure you've all heard of Nightingale House in South London. So the choir performed at 2 main events during the first 9 months of 99. We sang at a Sefiras Omer service at Stanmore with Chazan Henry, and through one of our choristers' contacts, we arranged a concert at Highgate Synagogue in July of that year, where we had 16 choristers participate. With my children, both at Sinai School in Kenton, it seemed logical to approach the school to arrange a fundraising concert for Sinai. So on the 5th of December 1999, the choir, with resident cantors Henry Black and David Shine, put on a concert in the David Band Hall with the school choir. The event was really well attended, and the children sang 3 pieces with the London Cantorial Singers. Next, the Hendon Adas Yisrael community invited the choir to provide the entertainment for their 60th Jubilee dinner, and this was in February 2000. The venue was the prestigious Hilton Hotel in Watford, and we sang with Chazan Siegel of the Hendon Adas. This event was attended by several hundred shul members and their families, and I have to say we all had a fantastic time. As previously mentioned, the late Lionel Lee was Hendon United Synagogue's choir master for many years, and we, the Cantorials, were privileged to sing several of his pieces together with the Hendon Shul Choir at a very special Shabbat service celebrating his music in April 2000. Part of the choir's mission statement includes entertaining our senior citizens. And in December 2000, the choir visited Morton House in Hemel Hempstead, and we gave an afternoon concert to the residents and the patients. The Corn Boys, grandsons of the late Moshe Korn from Hendon, sang several musical compositions with us. I was extremely proud, as you can imagine, of the choir's achievements during those early years. From every event we performed at, little by little, we started to make the necessary contacts ourselves, and my own knowledge and experience also grew with every event. Next, the London Borough of Barnet and Bernard Koshland asked the choir to participate in the very first Holocaust Memorial Day service, which was held in January 2001. This took place in the open air at Hendon Park in January, so you can imagine it was quite cold. The choir has been invited back nearly every year since then, and the event now takes place in the quadrangle of the Middlesex University in Hendon. Several hundred people now attend this annual event. In April 2001, a packed Hendon Shul heard the famous cantor Chaim Adler perform a Mariv service and the beautiful Hineni prayer with the choir. New music learned especially for this service was added to the choir's repertoire. A further 2 concerts were arranged that year at Romford and at Kenton. We now turn to 2002. This was a very special year for the choir, and in many ways it was a game changer. Before I continue, here's the choir singing piece number 2. Which is in the Hallel service, and that was with cousin Benjamin Chait, who came all the way from Saarbrücken in Germany. He came with his two brothers, and they performed at a tribute concert to their parents. This was a couple of months ago in the prestigious Princes Road Synagogue in Liverpool, and the choir was very fortunate to be part of that event. Incredibly memorable, and all the clips that you're seeing are from that concert. Discussions took place between the Lyons family and the choir about arranging a memorial concert for Ian. Reverend Reuben Turner, who knew Ian, took charge of the event. In March 2002, he brought Shimon Kugel over from America to be our guest entertainer. He sings a lot of Kalbach tunes, Shimon Kugel. Also, the Hasmonean Primary School's choir took part and sang two pieces taught to them by Shimon Kramer. Funds were raised for the North Hender Nadas and the Hasmonean Primary School, and Lady Jakobowitz was our guest of honor. The choir's profile was also enhanced when, in April 2002, I approached Reuben Turner, who agreed to become the choir's first patron. And that was the game changer. We went from 3 or 4 events a year to between 9 and 13 events. So a lot of singing. And this was due in large part to our association with Reuben Turner. Other concerts followed in what was to become our most productive year to date. In April 2002, we joined Henry at Stanmore for a choral Shabbat service. In the May, we sang at the Wanstead and Woodford Synagogue. And then in August, we performed our second of 3 consecutive Salichot services with David Shine, and they took place at Bushy United Synagogue. A chance phone call led to the Manchester Jewish community inviting the choir to sing with Benjamin Muller and his family at the prestigious Bridgewater Hall. And in October 2002, in celebration of the Queen's Jubilee, the planning of this event took many months to organise, and several new pieces were taught to the choir, including a specially composed tune for the Queen's Prayer. We sang some pieces with the famous Camerata Orchestra, and our resident cantors, David and Henry, started each half with Siyushiorim and Yismachu, respectively. The final piece, Yuvonim, from Mozart, was sung by the entire Muller family, including several of their children and grandchildren, and the choir. Nearly 2,000 people filled that auditorium. I think that's the biggest audience we have ever sung to live. We finished that year, 2002, with 2 events. First was another concert at Nightingale House, and on that occasion, Reuben Turner himself compared the concert. We also gave a concert in Luton with our soloist David Shine. So how to top 2002? This was a big question for the choir's committee. The choir had grown in numbers and in quality, but the one thing we wanted to do but lacked the funding was to create a professional recording of our best pieces. So we set about planning the CD project, which culminated in the choir recording 20 tracks at Olympic Studios, which sadly no longer exists, in Barnes in May 2003. After many months of editing and perfecting each piece with sound expert Simon Wilkinson of Boomtown Studios in Acton, the CD was completed and it went on sale in January 2004. In November 2003, our patron brought over Chazan, you may have heard this name before, Yitzhak Meir Helfgott, one of the most famous cantors in the world. He at that time was living in Israel, and he made his debut appearance in the UK. The choir was extremely privileged to sing with him in a choral Mariv service and concert at London Synagogue, and that was in large part organised by Rubin himself. In 2004, we changed venues for Salichot, and we took the whole choir to North East London for a service at Loughton Federation Synagogue, which was promoted by the organisation, the umbrella organisation of Neros. We sang with David Shine and Rev Johnny Lorraine to a packed shul. The atmosphere was truly remarkable, indeed a very memorable evening. In February 2005, we celebrated our 10th anniversary concert with a special event at Duke's Hall, which is in the Royal Academy of Music in Marylebone Road. Chazan of Romy Freilich was our guest cantor, and he was joined by Henry Black and David Shine. Daphne Lewis, who was our resident pianist, accompanied us, and Rubin managed to obtain the services of Nathaniel Valois, who played the violin to critical acclaim. The evening ended with a series of presentations commemorating the wonderful occasion, and Lady Jakobowicz graced us with her presence as well. So the famous Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, the arrangement was by Alan Friedman, and there you saw all three Chait brothers. Albi, who, as you know, is the rabbi of Leeds, Charlie, who is the Chazan of one of the Manchester communities, and Benjamin, who, as I said, is in Saarbrücken, and he travelled all the way to the UK just for that weekend. You have heard in detail about our early years up to 2005, but I've had to summarise our second decade because we were so busy. So from 2005 to 2015, the choir performed at many events. David Rome, who is with us this morning, joined the choir in 2005 and became one of our principal soloists. In addition to the dozens of concerts given at various residential care homes, and annual Holocaust Memorial Day ceremonies, and our annual First Night Chazan Choral Salichot services, apart from them, I've split the remaining concerts and services and other events into several categories. The list of concerts should be appearing on the screen. I must start this section by mentioning that we performed our 11th consecutive Salichot service in 2011 here at this very synagogue in Southgate. And David Rome led the service. Still remember it to this day, David, it was a great service. So going back to the categories, just shows you how versatile the choir is. There were 3 memorial concerts, David Follman, Jack Rosenberg, Peter Hyman. 1 valedictory service, sadly, but inevitable, Clapton Synagogue valedictory, that was at Leabridge Road in Clapton. We took part in that. There were 10 synagogue concerts in London, they're up on the screen. Some included Mincha and Ma'ariv services, and some raised funds for various Jewish charities. There were 12 concerts outside London, so we went into the provinces. We sang at the Bachal service at Radlett. Our first trip abroad was to Saarbrücken in Germany with Benjamin Chait. We were invited by Benjamin over to Saarbrücken to do a concert in his beautiful shul, and then the following day we took a coach to Frankfurt and we sang to a very large residential care home in Frankfurt. That was very memorable. We performed at two Malava Malkas at Wembley and Catford. There were Sefiros Omer services, some with concert pieces if it was after or on Lag BaOmer, and others just a service. We attended 2 book launches, Rabbi Shizler's music book launch in July 2009, and the launch of a book of poetry by Mayor Ben Elijah, or Mayor of Norwich, in June 2013, probably the most unique event in the choir's history. More about this later. 4 Hanukkah concerts, 3 at Brent, and 1 up in Canary Wharf. Through a contact there, we sang at the State Street Bank. We actually sang for a bank. There were 2 Shabbatons, the Wembley Shabbaton, and Reuben Turner was there for that Shabbat, and we did a Shabbat at Catford, Shabbat service at Catford. 2 induction services, 1 for our very own David Rome. That was in May 13, David, a long time ago. And Croydon induction, so the new rabbi of Croydon invited the choir to participate in his induction service, and that was in June 2013. There were 11 other concerts, again all on the board. We created our second CD in June 2010 by going into the famous Air Studios in Belsize Park. We spent a whole day, it was incredibly tiring, recording many tracks under the professional eye of our guru, Simon Wilkinson, who has been involved in all 3 of our CDs, Hallelujah, Lechuna Rananah, and Ms. Moshiach. In May 2015, we celebrated our 20th anniversary with a very special concert at Hendon United Synagogue. Chazan Yankee Lemma from New York was our guest cantor, David Silkoff, who still is our resident pianist, and he played the piano, and Miriam Kramer, who some of you might know, played the violin. This was a wonderful occasion and a very memorable event for all of us.
First of all, it's a wonderful thing to be here in this lovely shul in this lovely city. And the thing I really wanted to know is, do you speak Yiddish with a Liverpool accent? Or do you speak Liverpudlian with Yiddish? Maybe somebody can answer that afterwards.
So that was a very famous Yiddish piece, and Henry Black was our soloist. I now turn to the events in our third decade. Of course, we're still in that third decade. Apart from the usual care homes and HMDs and annual sleep-out services that have occurred every year since 2001, I now summarise what has happened between June 15 and March 20, when, of course, COVID hit. There were 3 synagogue concerts in London, Catford, 2 in Catford, 1 in Kenton. There were 2 concerts outside London, 1 in Watford and 1 in Ravenswood. We were invited to perform in Berlin at the Louis Lewandowski Festival in December 15. This was our second trip abroad. Malava Malka at Kingston Shul, Interfaith concert at Dulwich College. There were 2 Yom Yerushalayim concerts, one for the Rambam community in Bournemouth and 1 in Kenton, featuring the famous cantor Beryl Zucker. There were more Hanukkah concerts at Canary Wharf, at Citibank in December 16, at Citibank again in December 17, KPMG, we did a Hanukkah concert for them in December 18, And would you believe HSBC? We did a concert for them in December 19. There were 4 other concerts: Jamie Concert, Kenton Wood Cockdale, Norwood Kennedy Lee Centre for the Disabled, and the Willesden Library event, which was in January 20, just before the lockdown. There was a Shabbaton at Belmont Shore in June 18, and we took part in a Sabbath service at Ilford in March 19. We even had time to go back to the Air Studios in Belsize Park to record our 3rd CD in June 2017. Alan Friedman became musical director of our choir in 2019. He has actually given much time and thought into improving the choir's repertoire. In fact, some of the pieces that we will be performing at our annual Salichot service next week at Hampstead Shul on Motzei Shabbat, the 9th of September, has been arranged by Alan himself. And then COVID happened. During the COVID pandemic, and therefore the lockdown, the choir had to cease its weekly rehearsals. And instead, we met over Zoom every week, but not to sing. We created choir social evenings, much like you're doing this morning, meeting up. We tried everything from quiz evenings to presentations about famous musicians. We even had many of our retired choristers giving presentations on their interesting professional lives. We even arranged for the very famous Robert Rinder to zoom in with us in a general Q&A session. That was quite amazing. We created a virtual Salichot service in September 20 because we couldn't sing in person. And we created and completed what we called the Avinu project in October 2020. And both of those can be viewed in their entirety on the choir's YouTube channel. And that was COVID. Post-COVID, we were incredibly fortunate to perform with the prestigious Wigmore Hall in April 2022 in a concert commemorating the Kitchener Camp. If you have never heard of the Kitchener Camp, I implore you to go to the choir's YouTube channel where you can view the whole concert. The narration was by the famous John Sopel and Emily Maitlis, and Anthony Lishak, don't really know him, was responsible for organising and introducing the event. There was a concert in Belmont in June 22, and we made our 3rd trip abroad to Budapest in November 22 under the umbrella of the European Cantors Convention. A special event took place at Wembley Shore on the 11th of December, with the community saying goodbye to their premises in 40 Avenue as they were moving to a smaller building nearby. And then the next 6 months were our busiest ever. Apart from Brent Holocaust Memorial Day in January of this year, there was Nita Dorfman Home concert. We did a concert in Shenley in February. In Sage, we performed a concert for the residents in March. Rose Trees concert, which is not far from here, in March. We were at Sutton with our very own David Rome in May 2023. We were at Liverpool, as you've just been seeing, in June 23. And we even had time to go to Schonfeld Square in July 2023, where we gave a concert to their residents. Please come play piece 5. So, the famous A Down Along tune, called the San Francisco A Down Along. Not sure why it's called the San Francisco. At this stage, I have to say, I could not have done this on my own over the last 20-something years, 27, 28 years. I have to thank the Choirs Committee publicly for all their hard work and support. We have a website that's maintained by Melvin. We have a Facebook page that's updated by Daniel, and I look after the choir's YouTube channel. We are working on plans to bring new choristers into the choir, and we want to create a PR video. As part of this process, we will turn one of our Wednesday evening rehearsals into a workshop so that potential new choristers can come along and see for themselves what we do and how we learn new pieces. We will advertise when this is ready to be rolled out. Our 30th anniversary concert is just around the corner in 2025, so we will shortly start to make plans for this very special event. For any aspiring young singers, we actually have a plan to support their vocal training by paying for professional voice tuition to develop their skills. This is funded via the Stanford Family Choral Scholarship. Since the end of COVID, we are reintroducing the choir's annual meal, where spouses and family members are also invited along. And we have a great sing-along at that event. I would like to show you a video now that I created, one of our more unique performances. As previously mentioned, the choir was invited to a special book launch in Norwich in June 2013. Some of you may have heard of Mayor Ben Elijah. I'm going to read to you just part of a long article that was published soon after the event. Here's the article. On Thursday, 20th of June, we were treated to a unique and moving event as part of the World's 2013 Festival in Norwich, the launch of the first English translation of the poems of Mayor Ben Elijah, medieval England's only known Hebrew poet. The medieval setting of Dragon Hall in Norwich was perfectly suited to the collection, and as the music of Cantor David Rome and Cantor David Shine, together with the choir, floated up to the ancient rafters, the audience were taken back to a time of great division and persecution, but also of hope and of faith. Kieran Pym, the man who made this project possible, took to the lectern and talked passionately about Mayer's work and the work he, the translators, the benefactors, and the project supporters have been doing for the past 2 years. As the evening moved on, George Surtees gave a reading of the poems in English. His reading was both at once energetic and restrained, which to me seemed to reflect the voice of Mayer's poems, which at times cries out in rage, but also bears down in prayer. The London Cantorial Singers sang and drew the ethereal evening to a close, and as the audience members stumbled out, some almost seemed dazed from what had been quite a dreamlike experience. Please can we play piece 6, Miss Narcisse, which is one of the poems written by Mayer. Miss Narcisse, Miss Narcisse, So it was a 15th century madrigal. April is in my mistress' face. And what we did was we took the music from the 15th century and we put it to that beautiful poem, Miss Nassay, which may have been Elijah wrote in this beautiful book of poetry. And I have to say that that was probably one of the most unique experiences the choir has ever attended.
David, thank you very much indeed for a fascinating talk, and many thanks to the London Cantorial Singers who participated in it.